In 1983, a night shift supervisor at a Reno casino walked out with more than just his final paycheck. By morning, $2.5 million in cash had vanished without explanation, leaving investigators with no witnesses, no security footage, and no trace of where the money had gone. The case went cold faster than a losing streak at the blackjack table, buried under paperwork and abandoned leads. But 3 decades later, a single briefcase sold at an estate auction would crack open a mystery that had been sealed in silence for over 30 years. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. On the evening of March 14, 1983, the Golden Nugget Casino in downtown Reno was operating at full capacity. The weekend rush brought waves of gamblers from across Nevada and California, filling every slot machine and table game on the floor. Cash flowed through the casino like water, collected hourly by security teams and transported to the counting room where bills were sorted, bundled, and prepared for bank deposit. It was a well-oiled machine that had operated without incident for over a decade. Marcus Williams had been the night shift counting room supervisor for 8 years. At 34, he was known for his meticulous attention to detail and unshakable reliability. He arrived every evening at 6 p.m. sharp, reviewed the previous shift's reports, and oversaw the complex process of handling hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash. His team respected him. Management trusted him. And in all his years of service, not a single discrepancy had ever occurred under his watch. That trust would prove to be costly. The counting room operated under strict protocols. All cash was counted twice by separate teams, sealed in tamper-proof bags, and logged in multiple ledgers before being transferred to the main vault. Security cameras monitored every angle. Armed guards stood at each entrance, and electronic locks required dual authorization to open. The system was designed to be foolproof, accounting for every possible angle of theft or human error. On the night of March 14th, everything appeared normal. The evening shift completed their counts without issue, documenting $847,000 in total receipts from the casino floor. Williams arrived on schedule and began his standard review procedures. The money was accounted for, the paperwork was clean, and the vault transfers were ready to proceed. By 11 p.m., the routine was in full swing. What happened next would baffle investigators for decades. At approximately 2:30 a.m. on March 15th, Williams dismissed his counting team for their scheduled break. This was standard procedure during the slower overnight hours when casino activity typically decreased. The team of 4 employees left for the break room, leaving Williams alone in the counting area with access to the night's accumulated cash reserves. Security cameras showed him working normally, reviewing documents and organizing bundles of currency. At 3:15 a.m., the cameras went dark. According to the official incident report, a power surge caused by a malfunctioning transformer knocked out electrical service to 3 city blocks, including the casino's security system. Backup generators kicked in within minutes, restoring power to essential gaming operations. But the security cameras remained offline for nearly 45 minutes while technicians worked to reset the surveillance network. When the cameras came back online at 4:02 a.m., Marcus Williams was gone. His counting team returned from their extended break to find the room empty, the vault doors standing open, and Williams nowhere to be found. The cash that had been meticulously counted and prepared for deposit was missing. Not all of it, but a significant portion. Initial estimates placed the loss at just over $2.5 million, representing the bulk of the weekend's accumulated gaming revenue. The scene was pristine. No signs of struggle, no broken locks, no evidence of forced entry. Williams had simply vanished, taking with him enough money to disappear forever. His car was found in the employee parking garage, keys still in the ignition, wallet and personal belongings left on the passenger seat. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. Casino management immediately contacted the Nevada Gaming Commission and local law enforcement. Within hours, a joint task force was assembled to investigate what appeared to be the largest internal theft in Nevada gaming history. The FBI was called in due to the interstate implications and the potential for federal charges related to organized crime. The investigation began with Williams himself. Detectives scoured his background, financial records, and personal relationships looking for any indication of motive or planning. What they found was a man living a quiet, unremarkable life. Williams rented a modest apartment in Midtown Reno, drove a 10-year-old sedan, and had no significant debts or unusual expenses. His bank account showed regular deposits from his casino salary and nothing more. He had no criminal record, no known gambling problems, and no suspicious associations. Friends and co-workers described him as dependable, honest, and somewhat reserved. He lived alone, kept to himself, and seemed genuinely committed to his work. There was no obvious reason why Marcus Williams would risk everything for a massive theft. The technical investigation proved equally frustrating. The power outage that had disabled the security system was confirmed to be legitimate, caused by equipment failure at the municipal power station. There was no evidence of sabotage or coordination. The timing appeared to be purely coincidental, creating a window of opportunity that Williams had somehow recognized and exploited. Investigators examined every detail of the counting room procedures, looking for weaknesses or insider knowledge that could have facilitated the theft. The vault's electronic locks showed no signs of tampering, and Williams had legitimate access codes as part of his supervisory duties. The missing money had been stored in standard deposit bags, each weighing approximately 20 pounds when full. Moving $2.5 million would have required multiple trips or assistance, yet no one had seen Williams leaving the building with any packages or containers. The casino's employee entrance log showed Williams badging in at 6:04 p.m. on March 14th, but no corresponding exit record existed. The system required all employees to badge out when leaving, creating an electronic trail of their movements. Williams had either found a way to bypass the system or had left through an alternative route that avoided the electronic checkpoints. A thorough search of the casino revealed no hidden passages or unmonitored exits. Every door was accounted for, every camera angle had been reviewed, and every employee on duty that night had been interviewed. The money and Marcus Williams had simply disappeared without leaving any trace of how or where they had gone. The FBI expanded the investigation beyond Reno, checking airports, bus stations, and border crossings for any sign of Williams. His photograph was distributed to law enforcement agencies across the western states, and his financial accounts were frozen pending the outcome of the investigation. Bank records showed no unusual activity in the days leading up to the theft, and no large cash deposits had been made to any accounts under his name. Family members were contacted and interviewed extensively. Williams had grown up in Oakland, California, the youngest of 3 children raised by his grandmother after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12. His siblings described him as quiet and responsible, someone who had worked hard to build a stable life for himself. Neither had heard from him in the weeks following the theft, and both appeared genuinely shocked by the allegations. The case began to take on an almost supernatural quality. How does a man walk out of a secured casino with $2.5 million in cash without being seen, heard, or detected by any of the multiple security systems designed to prevent exactly this type of crime? The logistics alone seemed impossible, yet the money was undeniably gone, and Marcus Williams was nowhere to be found. As weeks turned into months, the active investigation began to wind down. Federal agents had pursued every lead, interviewed every potential witness, and examined every piece of physical evidence. The trail had gone completely cold, leaving investigators with more questions than answers, and a case file that would eventually be marked as unsolved. The Nevada Gaming Commission launched its own parallel investigation, focusing on potential security breaches and procedural failures that could have enabled such a massive theft. Internal auditors combed through years of casino records, looking for patterns or previous incidents that might have served as practice runs for the main event. They found nothing. Williams had been a model employee with an impeccable record, making his sudden transformation into a master thief even more perplexing. Casino executives were forced to implement new security measures immediately. Additional cameras were installed, counting room procedures were overhauled, and the number of personnel required for cash handling was increased. The changes came at enormous expense, but the alternative was risking another catastrophic loss that could threaten the casino's operating license. The investigation took an unexpected turn when detectives discovered that Williams had taken 2 weeks of vacation time in January 1983, just 2 months before the theft. His supervisor had approved the request without question, as Williams rarely took time off and had accumulated substantial leave. Hotel records showed he had spent several days in Las Vegas, staying at modest accommodations and paying with cash. This discovery prompted investigators to examine Williams' activities in Las Vegas more closely. Security footage from various strip casinos was reviewed, but the tapes from January had already been recycled as a part of standard retention policies. Interviews with hotel staff and casino employees yielded no useful information. Williams had apparently kept a low profile during his visit, attracting no attention and forming no memorable interactions. The Las Vegas connection raised new possibilities about the theft's sophistication. Had Williams used his vacation to study other casino operations, looking for vulnerabilities he could exploit back in Reno? Was he working with accomplices who had provided technical expertise or logistical support? The answers remained elusive, buried somewhere in the 2-month gap between his suspicious vacation and the night everything went wrong. By summer 1983, the case had attracted national media attention. The story of a trusted employee who had vanished with millions in casino cash captured the public imagination, spawning countless theories and amateur investigations. Some suggested Williams had been killed by organized crime figures who had orchestrated the theft. Others believed he was living under a new identity somewhere in South America, enjoying his stolen fortune on a tropical beach. The casino's insurance company launched its own investigation, hiring private detectives to pursue leads that law enforcement had abandoned. Their efforts proved equally fruitless. Every potential sighting of Williams turned out to be false. Every financial trail led nowhere, and every theory crumbled under scrutiny. The money had vanished as completely as the man who had taken it. Local newspapers ran anniversary stories each March, rehashing the details and speculating about Williams' fate. The case became part of Reno folklore, discussed in bars and coffee shops throughout the city. Some residents claimed to have seen Williams in distant locations, while others insisted he had never left Nevada at all. The stories grew more elaborate with each retelling, transforming a simple theft into an almost mythical tale of the perfect crime. Law enforcement maintained the case file as an open investigation, but active pursuit of leads gradually ceased. New cases demanded attention, and the Williams theft became a cold case that gathered dust in filing cabinets. The FBI periodically reviewed the evidence, hoping that advances in forensic technology might reveal previously overlooked clues, but nothing materialized. The casino eventually recovered from the financial blow, though the theft remained a sensitive subject among staff and management. New employees were trained on the incident as a part of their orientation, learning how even the most trusted individuals could potentially compromise security. Williams became a cautionary tale, proof that extensive background checks and years of reliable service could not guarantee loyalty when faced with the right opportunity. As the years passed, the case faded from public memory. Newer scandals and crimes captured headlines, and the story of Marcus Williams became relegated to true crime enthusiasts and local historians. The casino changed ownership twice, underwent major renovations, and implemented state-of-the-art security systems that made the 1983 theft seem almost quaint by comparison. But in 2014, 31 years after that fateful March night, a discovery would emerge that would breathe new life into the cold case. It began not with a dramatic police raid or a deathbed confession, but with something far more mundane: an estate sale in Sacramento, California. James Mitchell had worked as a maintenance supervisor at various Nevada casinos throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, before retiring to California's Central Valley. His neighbors knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself, tended a small garden, and occasionally played poker at the local Indian casino. When he died of natural causes in early 2014, he left behind no immediate family and few possessions. Mitchell's estate was handled by a court-appointed administrator who arranged for his belongings to be sold at auction. The sale attracted the usual crowd of bargain hunters and antique dealers looking for overlooked treasures among the accumulated possessions of a lifetime. Most items went for modest prices: furniture, tools, books, and household items that held little value beyond their utility. Among the lots was an unremarkable leather briefcase that had been found in Mitchell's bedroom closet. The auctioneer described it as vintage, possibly from the 1970s or early 1980s, with brass fittings and a combination lock. The leather showed signs of wear but remained structurally sound. It appeared to be empty, making it attractive primarily to collectors of vintage luggage or business accessories. The bidding was modest, with several people showing mild interest in the briefcase's craftsmanship and classic styling. The winning bid came from Robert Chen, a Sacramento businessman who collected vintage office equipment and accessories for his consulting firm's conference rooms. He paid $47 for the briefcase, considering it a reasonable price for a well-made piece that would look distinguished on his office bookshelf. Chen transported the briefcase to his office and placed it on a credenza behind his desk, where it sat undisturbed for several months. He had not attempted to open it, assuming it was empty as the auctioneer had indicated. The combination lock appeared to be set to a random sequence, and Chen had no particular interest in discovering what, if anything, might be inside. The briefcase might have remained a decorative office accessory indefinitely, if not for a chance encounter during a client meeting in late 2014. Chen was discussing project timelines with a potential customer when the man's attention wandered to the briefcase on the credenza. The client, who introduced himself as a former casino security director, remarked on the briefcase's similarity to ones he had seen used by gaming industry personnel in the 1980s. The comment sparked Chen's curiosity about the briefcase's history and contents. After the client left, he examined the case more carefully, noticing details he had previously overlooked. The leather bore faint impressions that might have been initials, and the brass fittings showed the kind of wear patterns that suggested regular professional use rather than occasional personal travel. Intrigued, Chen decided to attempt opening the combination lock. He tried several obvious sequences, 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 3, and various date combinations that seemed logical for a briefcase from the early 1980s. After an hour of unsuccessful attempts, he was ready to give up when he noticed something peculiar about the lock mechanism itself. The lock showed signs of having been forced at some point in its history. Tiny scratches around the dial suggested someone had used tools to try to open it, though the mechanism itself remained functional. Chen noticed that 2 of the 3 number wheels moved freely, while the third seemed to stick at certain positions. When he applied gentle pressure and rotated the stubborn wheel, it clicked into place at the number 7. Working systematically from this clue, Chen discovered that the combination was much simpler than he had imagined. The sequence 777 opened the lock with a satisfying click, revealing that the briefcase was far from empty. Inside, nestled in the burgundy silk lining, were documents that would transform a forgotten estate sale purchase into evidence in one of Nevada's most notorious unsolved crimes. The first item Chen encountered was a faded Nevada driver's license bearing the name Marcus Williams. The photograph showed a serious-faced black man with close-cropped hair and wire-rimmed glasses, matching the age and description from the missing person reports that had circulated 3 decades earlier. The license had expired in 1985, 2 years after Williams had vanished from the Reno casino. Beneath the license were several other documents that painted a disturbing picture of careful preparation and long-term planning. Bank statements from 3 different institutions showed accounts opened under the name Jerome Mitchell, each containing modest deposits made over a period of 18 months prior to the theft. The amounts were small enough to avoid triggering reporting requirements, but collectively represented a significant sum. Most shocking was a handwritten journal that detailed Williams' growing disillusionment with his position at the casino. The entries, dated from late 1981 through early 1983, revealed a man struggling with financial pressures and personal demons that no one in his professional life had suspected. His grandmother in Oakland required expensive medical care. His older brother had been laid off from his factory job, and Williams felt trapped by obligations he could never meet on his casino salary. The journal entries grew darker as they progressed, documenting Williams' careful observation of security procedures and his gradual realization that the counting room's protocols contained a fatal flaw. He had noticed that during the overnight hours, when casino activity slowed, there were brief windows when a single supervisor could access large amounts of cash without immediate oversight. The discovery had planted a seed that grew into an elaborate plan. Chen found himself reading late into the evening, absorbed by the methodical way Williams had documented his preparations. The man had spent months studying the casino's operations, noting guard rotations, camera angles, and the precise timing of cash transfers. He had even researched the city's electrical grid, identifying the transformer station whose failure would eventually provide his window of opportunity. The journal revealed that Williams had not acted alone, though his accomplice remained unnamed in the written records. References to Jay appeared throughout the later entries, describing meetings and planning sessions that took place away from the casino. This mysterious partner had apparently provided technical expertise and logistical support, helping Williams understand how to move large amounts of cash without detection. The Las Vegas vacation that had puzzled investigators was explained in detail through the journal entries. Williams had used the trip to establish his new identity as Jerome Mitchell, opening bank accounts and securing identification documents that would allow him to disappear after the theft. He had also used the time to study other casino operations, looking for confirmation that his plan could work. Chen discovered a manila envelope containing photographs that showed various locations around Reno, including exterior shots of the Golden Nugget and detailed images of the employee parking garage. The pictures appeared to have been taken with a telephoto lens from concealed positions, suggesting surveillance that had gone far beyond casual observation. One photograph showed the transformer station whose failure had disabled the security cameras, with handwritten notes indicating optimal access points for sabotage. The briefcase contained maps of Nevada and California, with routes marked in red ink, leading from Reno through small towns and back roads toward the Sacramento area. Notations indicated safe houses and supply caches that Williams had apparently established along these routes, creating a network that would support his escape and eventual disappearance. Perhaps most damning was a detailed floor plan of the casino's security areas, including the counting room, vault locations, and camera positions. The drawings were far too accurate to have been created from memory alone, suggesting that Williams had somehow obtained official architectural plans or had spent considerable time making careful measurements during his regular duties. As Chen continued reading, he found entries describing the night of the theft itself. Williams had written about his nervous anticipation as he waited for the power outage that would create his opportunity. He had somehow known in advance that the transformer would fail, though the journal did not explicitly describe how this knowledge was obtained or whether the failure was natural or engineered. The theft itself was described in clinical detail. Williams had used a service cart normally employed for transporting documents to move the cash from the counting room to a maintenance area where his accomplice waited with a vehicle. The entire operation had taken less than 30 minutes, with Williams using his knowledge of the building's layout to avoid areas that might still have backup security coverage. The journal entries ended abruptly after the night of the theft, but the briefcase contained other items that suggested what had happened next. A bus ticket stub showed travel from Reno to Sacramento on March the 16th, 1983, just one day after the crime. Hotel receipts indicated a week-long stay at a modest motel in Sacramento, paid for in cash under the Jerome Mitchell identity. Chen found bank deposit slips showing that large amounts of cash had been placed in safe deposit boxes at 3 different banks in the Sacramento area during the weeks following the theft. The deposits were structured to avoid reporting requirements, with each transaction falling just below the threshold that would have triggered federal oversight. Williams had clearly understood the banking regulations and had used that knowledge to launder the stolen money systematically. Real estate documents showed that Jerome Mitchell had purchased a small house in Sacramento's Oak Park neighborhood in late 1983, paying cash for a property that would serve as his base of operations for the next 3 decades. The house was modest and unremarkable, chosen specifically for its anonymity and the transient nature of the surrounding neighborhood. The transformation from Marcus Williams to Jerome Mitchell appeared to have been complete and successful. The briefcase contained a Social Security card, voter registration documents, and even a library card, all issued under the false identity. Williams had built an entire life around his assumed name, working maintenance jobs that paid in cash and avoiding the kind of employment that would require extensive background checks. Chen discovered that Mitchell had worked at several casinos in the Sacramento area during the 1990s, apparently unable to completely abandon the industry that had made his theft possible. The irony was striking. Williams had stolen millions from a casino, only to spend his remaining years working for similar establishments, albeit in a much more modest capacity. The briefcase also contained evidence that Williams had maintained contact with his accomplice over the years. Letters signed only with the initial D referenced meetings and shared concerns about potential discovery. The correspondence suggested that both men had successfully established new identities and had managed to avoid detection by law enforcement, but they remained connected by their shared secret. One letter, dated 1995, contained a disturbing revelation about the power outage that had enabled the original theft. The writer indicated that the transformer failure had not been accidental, but had been carefully orchestrated using inside knowledge of the electrical system. This suggested that Williams' accomplice had been someone with technical expertise and access to municipal infrastructure, possibly an employee of the power company or city maintenance department. As Chen absorbed the implications of what he had discovered, he realized that the briefcase represented far more than historical curiosity. The documents provided a complete roadmap of one of the most successful thefts in casino history, revealing methods and connections that had remained hidden for over 30 years. The evidence could potentially lead to the recovery of millions of dollars in stolen money and the identification of accomplices who had never been suspected. The journal entries also revealed the psychological toll that the theft had taken on Williams over the years. Later, writings showed a man consumed by paranoia and regret, constantly worried about discovery and struggling with guilt over the crime that had defined his life. He had achieved financial security, but at the cost of his identity and peace of mind, living under an assumed name and avoiding meaningful relationships that might expose his secret. Chen found references to the money itself, with Williams noting that much of it remained hidden in various safe deposit boxes and cash locations throughout Northern California. The cash had apparently been too large an amount to spend or invest without attracting attention, leaving Williams in the paradoxical position of being wealthy on paper but unable to enjoy his stolen fortune. The briefcase contained maps marking locations where money had been buried or hidden, creating a treasure trail that spanned several counties. Some locations were described in detail, while others were marked with cryptic symbols that would require additional investigation to decode. The scope of Williams' hiding places suggested that recovering the full amount would be a complex undertaking requiring extensive coordination between multiple law enforcement agencies. Perhaps, most intriguingly, the document suggested that Williams had planned to eventually return the money, though the motivation for this decision remained unclear. Notes from the early 2000s referenced a desire to make things right and restore what had been taken. Whether this represented genuine remorse or a calculated attempt to reduce potential criminal penalties could only be speculated upon. The discovery of the briefcase represented a breakthrough that investigators had never imagined possible. After 31 years of silence, the case had suddenly been blown wide open by a $47 purchase at an estate auction. The methodical documentation that Williams had maintained throughout his criminal enterprise would now serve as evidence against him, even though death had placed him forever beyond the reach of justice. Chen understood that he was holding evidence in a major unsolved crime, and he knew that the responsible action was to contact law enforcement immediately. The briefcase and its contents would need to be turned over to authorities who could properly investigate the revelations and attempt to recover the stolen money. The amateur detective work that had begun with simple curiosity about a locked briefcase had uncovered one of the most complete confessions in criminal history. As he prepared to make the phone call that would reopen the case, Chen reflected on the strange chain of events that had brought these documents to light. Williams had spent decades successfully hiding his crime, only to have his secret revealed through the random circumstances of an estate sale and the curiosity of a businessman who collected vintage office equipment. The phone call Chen made to the Sacramento Police Department that December evening would set in motion events that investigators never could have predicted. Detective Maria Santos had been working cold cases for over a decade, but nothing had prepared her for the meticulous documentation contained within Williams' briefcase. As she spread the contents across her desk, one detail immediately caught her attention that Chen had initially overlooked. Tucked between the bank statements and maps was a small address book, its pages yellowed with age. Most entries were written in the same careful handwriting that filled the journal, but several names appeared in different ink, suggesting they had been added later. One name appeared repeatedly throughout the later pages, Darnell Washington, with multiple phone numbers and addresses spanning from Reno to Oakland. Santos ran the name through the database and discovered that Darnell Washington had worked as an electrician for the city of Reno from 1979 to 1984. His employment records showed he had been assigned to the maintenance crew responsible for the downtown power grid, including the transformer station that had failed on the night of the theft. The connection was too significant to ignore. The discovery of that briefcase didn't just solve a 31-year-old mystery. It revealed how a quiet casino supervisor and a city electrician had executed what investigators now consider the most methodically planned heist in Nevada history. While Marcus Williams took his secrets to the grave, the evidence he left behind led authorities to recover over $1.8 million from the hidden cash locations marked in his maps. Darnell Washington was arrested 6 months later, though he maintained his silence about the details of their partnership. The remaining money has never been found, and investigators believe it may still be buried somewhere in Northern California, waiting for the right person to stumble upon it. Sometimes the most carefully guarded secrets are revealed not through brilliant detective work, but through the simple curiosity of someone who bought the wrong briefcase at an estate sale.